Hello and welcome to Hops and Bros. This week, we're taking a look at monastic beers.
For an open window on a crafty world, Max and Chris from Ups and Brews. Welcome to Ups and Brews.
All right, so before we get started, a quick word for our sponsor. Brew HQ is your best stop for anything that is home brewing. Now, this is weird times. We have a lot of time on our hands. Why not start a new hobby like home brewing? A lot of people are doing bread, they're doing kombucha, they're doing that stuff, which is all good. It's all fun, and pizza dough. And cool. Why not? But home brewing gets you something more, which is once you're done home brewing, you get beer out of it. You're actually saving money. You're not spending money on beer from the outside that you buy in. No, you're making your own. And then you get to send it to your friends who are also probably in quarantine and would like some nice, refreshing beverages. And then you get notes on it. So home brewing is awesome. I love it. And that's why I got into this business, started home brewing, really liked the process. And now here I am, which to you guys, I guess, doesn't seem that far off from the first video, or you can literally just click on our first video and then come back to this one and realize that I've changed a lot. Anyways, homebrewing is really cool. Go check them out. Brew HQ. They have everything you need, equipment, ingredients, and they deliver. So you get to stay home, set your delivery, receive it, and then start homebrewing. You don't even have to move or go anywhere. If you want to start homebrewing, you can also type in bros at checkout and get a 10% discount. So you're homebrewing for a discount, which is really cool. Anyways, I'm going to start babbling and then just go check it out. Link's right there. All right, so this week we are completing our trifecta. If you have been paying attention, if you have been watching our videos, you will know that 3 weeks ago, 3 weeks from this video, we've done a German-style beers. 2 weeks ago, we've done, or I guess last week, we've done an English-style beer. And then this week, we are doing a Belgium-style beer, therefore completing our trifecta of 3 different countries of brewing beer, arguably the 3 most important countries that have been brewing beer, which we still use techniques for brewing to this day. And all the styles that those 3 countries have created are still brewed to this day, which is kind of impressive. It's really cool when you think that the Pilsner and the Lager was done hundreds of years ago, yet it's still being done today. And if you have a German Pilsner, it's probably being done in not only the same kind of process, just modern equipment, but also the same ingredients, which is kind of phenomenal. So this week in Belgium, we're looking at the Abbey style beer, the Trappist style beer. Those beers are monastic beers. Well, at least the Trappist is. The Abbey doesn't necessarily have to be. Any brewery can do it. But if you want to have that appellation Trappist, you need to be part of the 12 breweries who are allowed to do this. And they're all monastic breweries, which means that monks still practice there and monks still brew the beer, which is kind of phenomenal. They're not all just in Belgium. There's also one in the States, and there's a few in other countries around. I'm sure Chris will talk about that a little more. So Trappist Beers, really interesting story, I guess, to it. Very interesting way to brew. Before we get started with Chris, let us know in the comments below if you think it's important to have a distinction between Trappist and Abbey, or if it's the same thing. Let us know in the comments below what's your opinion, and at the same time, if you've had one or the other, did you feel any difference? Did you taste any difference, or did you actually prefer one that wasn't quote-unquote a Trappist, or do you think that there is merit to this? Chris, what exactly is this beer? Why is it important? Why are we doing a video on this today?
So Trappist Beers is a term mostly used to cover monasteries brewing beers. And why do we say Trappist? It's because it's a term that's actually law covered. You can't use it if you're a brewery out there in northern Manitoba and you want to do Trappist style beers and name your beer Trappist. You can't. You can use Abbey if you want to use it because it's inspired by monks that are doing beer. Speaking of monks, monks is probably one of the most interesting thing when we're talking about Trappists in general. And why? It's because the image of the actual monk. It's deeply ingrained in every beer drinkers that monks drink a lot of beers. And if you go back in history, and it's still rooted to this date into the Trappist spirit in itself. Because a Trappist brewery to be qualified as one need to be first a monastery and not a brewery. So monks are still brewing a nice low ABV beer, sessionable for themselves or for the locals around them. But after that, in production, they do produce higher ABV, stronger punching beers that are now known as the old time class. I think it's very interesting marketing side how different breweries are evolving around the style of Abbey style beers. And a good example, I think that it's very like it's straying away from the classic monk thing is how do you say monkey in Latin from Brasserie Charlevoix. It's a collab with Sawdust City and I think Black Oak Brewery. It's fantastic. I just love the more modern take on this different style, but also it's a I think it's a double IPA, like Dubel IPA, which is like a brown ale with a hoppy flavor to it. I just love it. So back to Trappist in general. I won't punch too much on it because I know that there's a lot of history around it, that it's still nebulous, it's still related to religion, which I'm not very keen towards, but I won't talk about religion, but it's very interesting to see that back in 1962, Chimay pushed very hard law-wise to get the Trappist name trademark in a way that no one can use it ever again. So it's limited to 12 Trappist monasteries across the globe. Most of them are located in Belgium, but you can find one of them in the United States. I know there's one in Italy and one in the Netherlands. The one in the Netherlands recently got its license back. I think it's a good way to see how they take it too hard and also how very tightly knit and tightly squeezed the laws around it are, because they lost their license for about I think it's 10 years. They got it back in 2005, which I think it's funny because I didn't know you can lose it by just not being Trappist enough. So obviously we can't talk about Trappist without mentioning some of the classics out there. And one of them is Orval. If you know about Orval, you probably already drank it. It's more of a golden saison-like beer. And what a very nice key thing about Orval is that before bottling, they add some Brettanomyces to it, which makes a nice aging beer that creates barn-like flavors over time. I do enjoy Orval. It's always been a classic, and every beer drinkers out there, beer geeks amongst them all, just cream all over Orval all the time. Secondly, Chimay. I think it's probably one of the most widely available Trappist beers out there with the white label, the red label, and the blue label. I have had 3 of them. It's all classic, very Belgian-y on the banana aromas, yeast flavors, a lot of caramel, raisins, a little bit of dark chocolate. They all blend those flavors very well, and Belgians, they know how to brew stronger ABV beers, blending in the sweetness and the more bitter character of a beer. Another classic is Rochefort. You probably know them from the numbers 6, 8, and 10. This is the range of, I don't want to say ABV because it's not ABV focused, but it's mostly flirting with chocolate aromas all across the board, but after that, changing across them. The reason why I'm not very specific on them is that I haven't had the opportunity to try every single one of them. I know that some of the Abbey Trappist style beers are hard to find, they're not very famous, but if you keep an eye on them, they do show up often on beer stores' shelves, but also just across some restaurants sometimes. If you have a specific beer place, they mostly have a good Trappist beer laying around their basement. You should probably order it. So Max, if you want to be your own monk at home right now, which I think being confined in your own space could be a great time to reflect on yourself, put on your hood, do a little beer prayer, and brew an Abbey style or a Trappist ale or whatever. Max, how do we do that?
Thanks, Chris. So we're going to take a look at the Trappist brewing requirements in this case. So Trappist beer basically comes in 4 different strengths or 4 different varieties: a single, double, triple, and quadruple. They're basically an old Belgian numeric system. So you're basically 1, 2, 3, 4. It also distinguishes the strength of that beer. So a single is going to be between 5 and 6 A double is going to be a little higher than that, so probably up to about 8. Triple is going to be 8 to about 10, and quadruple is going to be 10 to 12. Kind of follow that. The other interesting thing with those kind of, you're going from one to the other is the first one is a blonde, the second one is going to be a darker amber, kind of brown. Third one, the triple, is back to being a blonde, and then the quad is back to being an amber brown beer. The specific reason why that is, not too sure, but the way they do get that strength in alcohol is by using a Belgian candy sugar. So they're not Reinheitsgebot compliant. You don't have to follow any kind of rule of just using water, malt, hops, and then yeast. You can use anything you want in Belgium. So that's why there's orange peel in wit beers. In this case, with the single, double, triple, and quad, they use Belgian candy sugar as fermentable sugar for your yeast. That's how they're getting higher alcohol, while not really changing the body of the beer. So you still have a nice creamy feel with the higher alcohol ones, but you're not getting any of the burn, which is kind of phenomenal with these types of beer. You would think that at 12%, you would have an alcohol burn. It would be almost unbearable to drink, but no, it's actually very, very smooth for what this is. This is the kind of main way. Naturally, the yeast in this case is a little more alcohol resistant to be able to ferment all the way up there. Trappist beer has to be brewed by a monk. It has to be in a monastery to be able to have that label on there. Now, what about Abbey beers? Chris has mentioned a few things earlier, and should it affect the way you brew it? In a certain way, yes. In another way, no. In the Trappist's case, because it's a monastic beer, it's been brewed for hundreds of years in a very specific way. And if you want to keep your license, you have to be able to comply. And I guess the time kind of means that you are creating a product that is, tested, true and tested, and will be great every single time. If you've been brewing this for hundreds of years, you know the recipe inside and out, and you know exactly how to make it taste the way you want to. As with an Abbey style beer, because anyone can do it, you don't have that same care and attention on it as, the Trappist style. Is that true or not? I don't really think so. I think if you're a brewer and if you want to make this style of beer, you're going to make the best recipe you know to do. You're going to follow all the steps as well as you can. And in the end, you're going to have a product that is going to be probably very close to the monk version of that beer. The only difference that I could really see is in the Belgian candy sugar. So there's techniques to being able to do this sugar, and not every brewery would necessarily go through the steps of making it themselves, as in the monasteries they would. In this case, they would probably buy the sugar, just add it directly in. That could affect the beer, but essentially it's the same. An Abbey beer, a Trappist beer should, on paper, taste exactly the same, as long as the care and attention has been put in as much as the monks. If you're a normal brewer, it's not a lot to it. Now let us know in the comments below, as I mentioned earlier, if you've had both these beers, both the Trappist and Abbey style. Have you seen a big difference? Do you think there's a big reason or a legit reason why you would prefer one or the other? Let us know in the comments below. And as always, if you've liked the video, please leave a like, subscribe, share, and we'll see you guys in the next one.